Does Mortal Kombat have a guest character problem? Well, hopefully I'm going to answer that in today's video because I do believe there is a degree of nuance that does get ignored by the community at times, and people on both sides of the argument seem to oversimplify for a proper answer. If you do go on to enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and comment down below and let me know what you think about guest characters in Mortal Kombat or your favorite fighting game. But yeah, let's go ahead and hop right into this topic. Now, there are two things that actually made me want to make this video today. The first one was a post I saw on the Mortal Kombat Reddit about guest characters, and the second one was the Tekken community being up in arms about Clive being revealed for Tekken 8. And when I saw all of this uproar about Clive, it reminded me of the Reddit post, and I went back and I read through a bunch of people's opinions. These guys are really discussing this out there. I'll put the link to this Reddit post in the description. But it just got me thinking, like, does this game really have too many guest characters? Well, there's an easy way to find that out. So I'm going to pretty much focus on data in this video. I'm going to try to be the least bit opinionated. So let's go ahead and do that. So pretty much what I've done here is I've gone from MK9 to MK1 and added up the total amount of characters on each roster. Then I did the same thing for the total amount of DLC characters, and then finally the same thing for the total amount of guest characters. Now, obviously, before I add all of this up, obviously, you know, guest characters are not a big part of the games, right? But there are people in these posts that would have you believe that there are way too many guest characters, so I think this is important to do. I won't bore you with a long drawn out explanation because who wants to do math, man? We're talking about video games, right? So I'm gonna make this quick. In MK9, there are 5 DLC characters, 2 of them are guests. That's 40% of the DLC characters. In MKX, there are 9 DLC characters, 4 of them are guests, so more, 44%. In MK11, the same trend, there's 12 DLC characters, 5 of them are guests, 41%. And then in MK1, mind you, there was supposed to be another combat pack, there are 13 DLC characters and 6 of them are guests. So 46.2% of the DLC characters in Mortal Kombat 1 are guests, and that is the highest of the franchise so far. And for anyone who's extra curious, across all 4 of these games, there are 134 characters total and only 17 guest characters in total. So that would mean that 29.1% of all the characters are DLC, but only 12.69% of all the characters in these games are guests. Now, I'm sure you're wondering why I'm even rambling about all of this data bullshit, right? And it's pretty much just to put it in perspective just how many guest characters we've actually had over the years and to show when it became a problem. So in my opinion, I think that quantity and quality both need to be looked at with these characters because obviously you should have noticed the trend that over time there have been more guest characters in each game, right? And I think MKX hit the sweet spot. I think 4 is enough for a game. I think 5 is pushing it in MK11. So clearly having 6 when we were going to get another combat pack and potentially have more in MK1 is way too much. I'm sure most Mortal Kombat fans would agree with me that we would rather have like Hotaru or hell, even Kai come back than getting Peacemaker and the T-1000 in this game. And once you do the math and realize that almost half of all of the DLC characters in all of these games are guests, you start to understand why people are complaining about the amount in Mortal Kombat, because you might look at MKX and think, well, 4 isn't a lot, until you realize that that's 40 something percent of the DLC characters, and you're like, okay, when you put it in a perspective, now it seems like it's a lot more. Quantity isn't the only issue here though. The quality of the DLC characters has to be called into question as well. And by quality, I don't mean how polished the characters are, how faithful they are to the source material. I mean purely the decisions that they make with these DLC characters. So I would say that in MK9, Kratos makes sense, but Freddy Krueger just doesn't make sense for that game. So they got a 50% win rate on that. MKX, perfect. They knocked that game out of the park. When you get to MK11, I think you can argue that the only two that shouldn't have been there is Rambo and RoboCop. The other three, I enjoyed them. I think the other three fit pretty well. I mean, if you didn't like Terminator, I'd understand that too. But I think Rambo and RoboCop are the only two that don't make sense. But then you get to MK1 and you realize, like, bro, pretty much all of these DLC characters don't make sense. And I'm a horror fan, so for me, Ghostface is like a dream come true in Mortal Kombat, right? But it doesn't feel like this was the Mortal Kombat for him. He missed the horror movie hype train in MKX. So it doesn't really feel like he fits into this game. And I'll be damned if the rest of them do. Like, let's be real. We got 3 comic book characters from the jump. That's ridiculous. And obviously those characters do have their fans, right? But you'd be lying if you said that the general consensus when Kombat Pack 1 dropped wasn't people saying like, bro, I don't care about these guest characters. I'm pretty much just gonna play the Mortal Kombat characters. And I think that's a valid critique, especially when you consider the fact that there are so many guest characters that would make more sense. My opinion is that NetherRealm in the future, whenever Mortal Kombat 13 or MK2, whatever they're going to call it, whenever that game comes out, focus on collabing with other games and other games that make sense, bro. Like, Doomslayer in this game is a perfect layup, man. Great example. Y'all did it with Kratos. Y'all can continue to do that, man. Just collab with other video games, especially if you can get other fighting game characters. I mean, I don't think anybody from Tekken or Street Fighters making it into Mortal Kombat, they're not gonna have their characters getting fatality and brutality and shit, right? So I don't think that's gonna happen. But collabing with like horror games and just really violent games would just make perfect sense for Mortal Kombat. And these DLC or guest characters in MK1 feel more like they were capitalizing off hype rather than catering to what the fans might actually want in the game. The last thing I want to leave you guys with is a good example of a game doing perfect collabs, in my opinion, right? And that game is Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight has a monopoly on the horror genre right now, like horror gaming genre. It's the biggest horror game. And from the start, it was set up to be successful because the first license they got was Halloween. They got Michael Myers and Laurie Strode in the game, which pretty much showed other horror IP holders, wow, this game is actually worth investing in and worth putting our time into. Mortal Kombat is way bigger than this game, right? So keep that in mind. But all Dead by Daylight has to do is continue to collab with other horror IPs, whether they be games, movies, and even things that aren't even horror, just things that make sense for that game. Like, I would say pretty much every collab in that game does make sense. And then they can also have their own unique ideas. They make chapters that are actually just their original ideas. And those, you know, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But the point I'm making is the collabs in Dead by Daylight are easy. It's a horror game. They collab with mostly horror IPs. I mean, pretty much any horror icon you can think of that's not Jason is in that game. They have Freddy, Michael Myers, they have Leatherface, they had Ghostface before we had Ghostface, they have Freddy Krueger, they have Alien, right? Or Xenomorph, they have Chucky. So it just makes sense. They're getting Five Nights at Freddy's next year. They have 2 Resident Evil chapters. Like, man, that game is a great example of the direction I want NetherRealm to go in. Just collab with games and games that make sense. And if you're gonna collab with movies that make sense, because Peacemaker does not make sense. As long as they do that and prioritize either bringing back old MK characters or making new original characters for DLC, I think we'd be fine in the next game. But that's pretty much it for this video. Like I said at the start, if you did enjoy this, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you think I'm a genius. Let me know if you think I'm an idiot and everything I said is wrong. Let me know if you think this video was a waste of time. Just let me know how you feel in the comments. But yeah, that's it for me for now, man. I just needed to talk about this because it's been on my mind ever since I saw that Reddit post. Peace out.